Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 114th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this video, I'd like to talk about the 1% or the 0.5% or whatever. And this idea is not about, this time I'm not talking about the ultra rich, which is typically what is meant by the 1%. I'm talking about in certain spiritual circles, there's always these numbers that come about how many humans it will actually take in terms of their shift to a new level of consciousness for humanity to sort of make giant leap forwards. And that will basically like the precondition of how many humans have to quote unquote wake up or evolve in their consciousness in order to set humanity on a more positive path or whatever. And I've been reading a book lately. It's called The Gut. What is it? The Gut Revolution, something like that. Let me check. Oops. Yeah, it's actually called The Gut Balance Revolution. So you'll balance. So you'll find that book. It's quite a good read, especially if you have stomach and digestive problems. I've been following one of the recommended diets because I had many problems with my gut, and it really stirred up a lot of things in me. Obviously, because there's a symbolic level of when you have problems with your digestive system. It's maybe experiences in your life that you didn't digest, emotions you didn't digest, you can, if you're incapable of doing the digestion of those things, then you have to really take care of what you eat, because then it will just once you're out of balance, you're basically out of balance. And in that book, what was really interesting is that there was this statistic of your human cells are in a ratio of 1 to 10 with microbial cells inside your body. So for every one of your cells that is human, there are in your body 10 microbial cells. And in terms of the ratio between human DNA and microbial DNA, it's the microbial DNA outnumbers your human DNA by 1 to 100. So there's 100 times more microbial DNA in your body than human DNA, which is, to me, that was like a slap in the face, sort of a wake-up call that what we think a human is basically just a nice little sort of form or envelope around microbes or, bacteria, viruses, whatever. And there is just this 1% or 10% if you want to take it. There's just this 10% kind of envelope around it, surrounding the body, that envelops all those little microorganisms. And that's a human. So we're basically just a sentient, walking, talking sack of bacteria. And it's only that 10% in terms of the cells and that 1% in terms of the DNA that makes the difference between us and, just random unicellular microbes and microorganisms that are in a swamp somewhere. And they're basically the same thing. Not exactly the same thing, because obviously once they are part of your organism, they start behaving slightly differently because they're in a totally different environment, of course. Here it's an environment of separation where every microorganism is fighting against any other microorganism. In your body, what your body is it sort of wraps It wraps all of those microorganisms under what I would say is simply unconditional love. Oops. Conditional love. And especially harmony. And that changes everything to their behavior. And these, of course, are esoteric ideas. But just think about it. I mean, your body's wisdom is what? To know where each of these microbial organisms belong and where they are in harmony and in balance. If you move the bacteria that are in your gut and put it somewhere in your arm or in your heart or in your brain, they're going to eat you up alive. You're going to rot from the inside. And so each of these microbes, these microbial organisms, has a place, has a purpose, and the intelligence of the body is basically to know exactly where each of these organisms should be so that they can sort of contribute positively to the maintain your body or alive, and not negatively. Because that makes the difference between what a human is and just a random sack of microbes in a swamp. And I find that really interesting because many esoteric circles are saying that, well, actually, only 1%, or even sometimes less, they say, of humans waking up is necessary to sort of tip the scales in favor of, this quote unquote mass awakening, which isn't a mass awakening, but just to set us on a path where we form a global collective organism as the planet, and not go into self-destruction, and decompose into separation. And so that 1% of humans, that basically the human DNA ratio to the microbial DNA is like the 1% of humans that have this information and intuition about being a part of a global organism. And it's when only 1% of the population is necessary in that knowing for the switch to be effective, because the 99% other humans, they don't even need to be awake. They can carry on doing what they're doing. If they're musicians, they can keep on playing music, thinking nothing about God, the universe, their place in the universe. They can just do beautiful music and be oblivious to all of this, regardless of their beliefs, because what the 1% in my mind are responsible of doing, and I count myself in this, is to put in place the systems and sort of metastructure for all of these humans to be able to carry on with their lives without having to worry about, all these esoteric and spiritual ideas and concepts. They can continue being shop owners or, whatever, inventors, engineers. It doesn't really matter, because it's the metastructures and the systems that is the most important. For instance, I always talk about, for instance, the circulatory system, the heart and all of the veins and everything. And what allows each cell to play its role blindly without having to worry about anything is the fact that the heart distributes oxygen through this network indiscriminately. It just, there's oxygen coursing through your entire body, and the cells receive the energy they need. And that's the end of it. And right now, many of the systems that are in place, like for instance, the financial system, which is the circulatory system, do not operate on this basis, and therefore would not allow humanity at that stage to form a collective global organism. But imagine that only 1% of humans understand and wake up to this reality, and they just quietly reform the financial system to include a sort of a universal basic income sort of universal basic income that people receive unconditionally, and they don't have to worry about how it works. They just know that they're going to receive their little, whatever, 10 euros or $10 per day, with which they can vote on what is important to them. And they don't need to know that that's because they're a part of a global organism. They don't need to know any of this. But the fact of that happening already shifts completely their consciousness, unconsciously. That is, they're no longer acting from a place of fear, but from a place of trust and calm and and hope for a better future, and they can stop worrying about survival and start worrying about, well, life. What is life beyond survival? And that is what completely shifts the whole human species. As you go from worrying about survival, which is the survival of your body, your physical integrity, which is basically all we've been doing, to life as in fulfilling our role as humans, and worrying about what ideas do I want to manifest in this physical reality. That's what we are, a bridge between biology, physical reality, and immaterial thought and ideas. Um, and there's a big chance that with this new, with the right metastructures in place and the right systems in place, once you manifest ideas, you're not going to manifest them out of survival and fear. And therefore, the ideas you're going to manifest is going to be much more harmonious, just like the behavior of the microbial life inside your organism is much more harmonious than the microbial life in the middle of a swamp, and the behavior of each microorganism to each other. And so, um, and that's for everything. That's for the financial system. In my mind, is the first domino to fall, and then all the others sort of follow. And so, ultimately, it's also about harmony and having that wisdom about harmony, and sort of knowing. And I'll give you a simple example, for instance, that is very easy to understand, but apply that to everything. Like, this kind of wisdom that you have is something that everybody has. Is when you listen to someone playing the violin, you instinctively sort of have a knowing of whether it's better to put them on a stage in front of thousands of people listening to them, or whether it's better to put them in a rehearsal room where they're alone and they're practicing their scales because they're not sort of good enough yet. And that's the principle of harmony. That is, you have humans that do a certain action, like, for instance, they play the violin. And in one instance, it's going to be harmonious, and another instance is going to be disharmonious or displeasing. And so, with the same action, like playing the violin, you kind of know where, depending on the level of the or how well the player plays, whether it's best for them to remain in a practice room or to go walk on stage and play in front of everyone. And that is the kind of wisdom that these 1% going on to 10% as time goes forward will have, is that they'll instinctively sort of know, when they look at humanity and all the things that we're doing, how to sort of bring all of these different actions, these different people that are doing different things together, to make it a harmonious interaction rather than a disharmonious interaction. And it's the same as this wisdom of your cells, human cells, that know exactly where certain microbial cells should be, and where they shouldn't be, in order for your body to be healthy. And that is something that is beyond a kind of a judgment of good and bad and evil and all of that stuff. It's just looking at someone and saying, oh, I actually see you here, happier here than there. Because there it's going to be disharmonious if you go here. And we've been doing that unconsciously, anyways. Like, for instance, trying to find, um, think about Middle Ages and what you did with people that had problems, or people that had various disabilities. Well, in most cases, in the Middle Ages, we just kill them, get rid of them. We'd consider that these people were not, behaving according to whatever standard or whatever that we had, and they didn't fit into the norm, and we just got rid of them. And today, if you look at, you know, autism, Down syndrome, all of these things, we are creating environments in which these people can thrive, being who they are, and there is clearly a balance between inclusion in mainstream society, quote unquote, and recognizing their uniqueness and what they can bring to the world, and the fact that they will not necessarily um, be at their best in a normal sort of social or whatever standard environment. And we're getting better and better at this. It's just that we need to still deal with a lot of duality here, and struggle and whatever, because there's still people that think that it's like people are we're still swinging between extremes, basically, and we haven't found the balance, because some people will say we should revise our entire society to make it accessible to absolutely everyone. Um, and that is, well, it's wishful thinking. And I think maybe at some point in the future we may achieve that, but it's going to be a very long process. And many of these people are acting like spoiled brats, like just stomping their feet and saying, I want it now, because many of them, of course, have suffered from abuse, being victimized or whatever. And so when they're facing society, they're like, why should I wait for society now to sort of be apologetic for all the harm that it has done me, whether you're autistic or have a disability or whatever? Why should I wait? Now society has to move forward and quickly, because I deserve reparations for all the harm that was done to me. It's kind of victim mentality. And then the other extreme, you have people that are revisiting almost the Middle Ages mentality of saying, hey, if you don't fit into the standard, just go die somewhere and leave us alone, which is also terrible, of course. And but we're getting there. We're sort of getting there. And the idea, of course, is not for if you're a microorganism that is living in the gut and is important to break down food, then your environment is really tailor made to who you are, and you're thriving there. You're very happy there, and you wouldn't want to sort of go on a crusade against the liver or something, because you don't feel good there, and you want to transform the liver to be just another gut environment. That would be kind of ridiculous. And of course, this is an extreme example, because in our human reality, it's much more flexible, and these kind of boundaries are not as fixed as the roles that the cells and the microbes have inside your organism. But there will still be that kind of separation where, no, you will not feel like you belong and like you fit everywhere. But you'll learn to accept that, because you love and you accept who you are, and you don't need every single part of the world or groups of people accepting you and loving you to have this to have this sensation that you have the right to love yourself. Like, that's what basically many people that have been a victim are requiring from the world now, whether it's people that have experienced racism or whatever, or women that have experienced sexism. They want to be sure that wherever they go, whatever the country, whatever the culture, that they're loved and accepted for who they are. That you're a woman and you want to have your rights, you want to have everything. Whereas if you don't feel like a victim, then you have no problem with the fact that if you go to a country, you'll be shot at or you'll be, discriminated or whatever. You're saying, okay, that's fine. I actually don't need to be accepted everywhere. I just I feel okay with being accepted where I fit in, and with the group of people that I feel an affinity with, and I don't need to feel like I should be accepted everywhere. Um, and you know exactly what your preferences are, and you don't want everybody else to change for your acceptance. And of course, that balance is extremely delicate to strike, and that's what makes the difference between the human cells, unconditional love and harmony, that kind of knowledge, almost magical knowledge they have, and this microbial organisms in the swamp. It's that we will have that kind of intuition of just how large of a group you need to have to feel reassured. And that group's going to grow, of course, because human rights are going to spread more and more, and all that stuff. And like I said, once the metastructures are in place, once the systems change, and you're no more in a sort of survival mode, scared for your physical integrity, always protecting it, then there are many things that, many behaviors, many fears that are falling, and that completely change the kind of behavior you have. You're no longer sort of in a mindset where you want to continuously manifest and protest and demand more and more, but you're more in a mindset where you're enjoying who you are and what you can contribute where you are contributing, knowing that maybe if you try to contribute the same thing somewhere else, it might not be as well received. And if you think of my original idea of the violin, well, I had this really funny story about a guy that was an anthropologist, and he was a brilliant violin player. He knew how to play Bach absolutely wonderfully. And he would play in front of cultures that had never heard of that kind of music and those kind of harmonies. And he would play, like, for instance, a sad piece, a sonata or whatever. And the people started to laugh. And he was a little bit taken aback, saying, well, I'm playing this beautiful music for them and they're laughing. Why? Well, because in their culture, maybe from the way that their brain is wired or whatever, those kind of tunes, those kind of harmonies are funny to them. And that's okay. That's totally fine. And nobody is, in music, for instance, nobody's trying to push jazz upon everybody else. Nobody's going into a jazz bar and saying, this is outrageous. You should all just enjoy hard metal, or the reverse. But for many aspects of human life, of who we are in that kind of mindset of, we want to be accepted for what we enjoy, what we like, our habits, our culture, everything, wherever. And we want that to be universal. Um, but is that really necessary? And that will become less and less necessary. And we'll start to have the same kind of relationship with difference, accepting one's difference and expressing one's difference, and sort of recognizing that maybe who you are is not going to be acceptable for everyone wherever you are. Just like the music that you could play as a jazz musician will not be enjoyed by every single person. But that's okay. That's okay. And it's the same here. Like, you could imagine that the microbes in your gut are, jazz players, and the microbes in whatever other part of your body, in your liver or whatever, are classical music players. And they're not fighting against each other. They're just enjoying who they are and enjoying it in the company of people that appreciate who they are. And that's how I see the future. And that future all it requires is this 1% wisdom and information, and maybe 10% in terms of, how should I say, maybe um, in terms of the humans that act on that information. So 1% can hold the information, 10% need to act on that information, and then the 90% will then be enveloped in the systems and metastructures that makes it easy for them to be who they are without resistance, without having to fight against each other, without violence, without any of that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to leave a comment, and talk to you in the next one.